bad love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This a we we da fi. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This a we da fi. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. No, tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar. No Guatemala, follow me now. This a we da figure. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. No.
And welcome to Sunday Review for this morning, Sunday, August 9th, 2026. Behind the zinc fence at 3304 Amandala Drive in sweet Southside Belize City, in particular the country of Belize and across borders. We're simulcasting on Creme Radio, and this is the only news review talk show in the country, and the slogan is Making Sense of the News. This morning, we have on Zoom, last Sunday, Brother Mutota, the co-host of Sunday Review, was actually in Belize, in studio at XTV. This morning in the back their home country, Trinidad and Tobago. And as you don't know, there's only one person who are regular every month for Sunday Review. One person.
That would be me.
Our sister, Danielle S. Archer out of Jamaica. Good morning, Brother Akko. Good morning, Sister Danielle.
Good morning, Brother Akko. Good morning, YaYa. How you doing?
Good, thanks. Fine.
Good morning, Sister YaYa. Good morning, Attorney Danielle S. Archer. Good morning to our listening audience. It's once again to be a pleasure on Sunday Review and still recuperating from my wonderful, beautiful trip in Belize. Mm-hmm. It's become, one of my favorite places to visit again. So good morning once again.
I feel like somebody throwing words in my direction this morning. But you understand, I'm gonna have my moment, Brother Akko. I'm gonna have my and all of these photographs. I don't know if your listeners saw them. I don't know if your viewers saw them up on Facebook. But when Brother Akko first landed in Trinidad, I got this video from somebody who's trying to cool themselves down with that fan. So excited. Look at Brother Akko coming through the airport. He coming to Belize, and I was like,
You'll get your chance.
Yeah, then, Brother Akko started to boast and brag about how wonderful Belize is.
It's wonderful.
And I understood you sat behind the zinc fence. But you're good, Brother Akko. It's all love. I got nothing but love for you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Happy you enjoyed it.
Likewise, I did.
Mm-hmm.
Let me share, because I really want more traffic to the podcast Ethos Dispatch by Sister Danielle S. Archer, Chief Integrity Architect. And this is the way he said at the podcast. It says Ethos Dispatch is a weekly leadership briefing for the Caribbean and the wider world, a disciplined, unhurried space examining the systems, decisions, and behaviors that shape institutional integrity. Hosted by Danielle S. Archer, attorney, Chief Integrity Architect, and Regional Reform Strategist, this podcast goes beyond commentary. It is formation. Each episode offers a grounded exploration of the pressures leaders face in small societies and complex systems, governance failures, cultural drift, compliance breakdowns, reporting gaps, and the subtle behaviors that bend institutions long before the headlines appear. She gets practical about accountability that holds under scrutiny, culture as the real risk, surface governance as architecture, decision-making under pressure, the discipline that protects leaders, the truths leaders avoid, movement building across the Caribbean, building a legacy that outlives applause. This is not entertainment. It is a weekly mirror, a summons into clarity, courage, and disciplined leadership. If you lead a team, a department, an institution, or a country, this briefing is for you. New episodes every Friday. Leadership outlives applause. And I take my time to do that because I really encourage individuals listening on radio, TV, live streaming to take the time. They're less than 10 minutes and they're usually posted every Friday. Ethos Dispatch. And that's why the sister could take up space
Thank you,
there.
YaYa.
Sunday review. No problem. So, we're talking about Caribbean news. Brother Akko,
Yes, Sister
back
Yaya. So
home, you're rested. You're going to dig up for Caribbean news.
this morning we have pieces from St. Vincent, Venezuela, Guyana, Cuba, Bermuda, Antigua, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and Barbados, and Belize. I noticed
What
I said
now?
Belize. Right. So the first one we are going to look at this morning is out of St. Vincent, and it's a very important article, in my opinion, on emancipation, because on my return to Trinidad, I found that we were in the middle of a situation regarding emancipation in which the University of Trinidad and Tobago had an emancipation event, and they invited an Indian dancer to participate, and that created a whole set of issues, which is still ongoing right now politically. So I want to read this article because I think we need to contextualize emancipation. So the article is out of St. Vincent. I found it very interesting. And the headline is What Emancipation Means. It begins, and I will read part of it. We acknowledge that the calendar day, August 1st, 2026, has come and gone. The person's writing this last Friday. But the significance of the day is such that there's always in its call a time for reflection on one of humanity's greatest triumphs over oppression. History shows that full emancipation in 1838 was not handed down by a benevolent master. It was won through blood and sacrifice, and a sustained and diverse resistance by enslaved Africans, who, as docile as many felt slavery had forced them into becoming, refused to accept that they were less than human. The oral traditions of enslaved Africans recall that their families were torn apart. Men and women were torn apart, and men and women and even children felt the full impact of the whip. And in as much as many felt the brutality of slavery might have resulted in a subdued and dehumanized people, that was far from the truth in the Caribbean. Africans never surrendered to the conviction that they were born to be free. Their struggle led them to the realization that we must recommit to a struggle that is more than once solely about liberating Africans. It was one that advanced the cause of all humanity, ensuring that no people should ever again endure the cruelty of such degradation. This is why we must reflect on or condemn the intent of modern-day Israel as it runs roughshod over the true people of Palestine. Every Vincentian is indebted to those who paid the ultimate price of freedom. This is why emancipation must never be reduced to African attire, music, and speeches. Emancipation is a solemn reminder that freedom is never free. It demands eternal vigilance. The enemies of freedom no longer carry trains or craft whips. They occupy positions of power. They centralize authority, weaken institutions, silence dissent, reward blind loyalty, and expect citizens to accept exclusion as normal. The chains today are forged from fear, complacency, and the abuse of power. Are we there yet? Every generation of Vincentian inherits an unfinished struggle. Every generation must decide whether it will defend liberty or quietly surrender to it. Our developing democracy should unite the nation in a collective resolve to work for the well-being of all Vincentians, not to live as though a dichotomy was a natural way to exist and that we must wage an unnecessary war for government power. And I will stop here because I think this captures the essence of the article. This idea that emancipation must somehow be exclusive and not inclusive. And I understand the argument some people are making. But I think what is happening in Trinidad, for example, because of this Indian dance, is that if my neighbor is to understand me, my neighbor need to be part of my history, part of my celebrations. And this to me was a lack of the understanding of what solidarity is. So I would stop here and hear the comments of both of you on that.
Let me take this time to recognize that Brother Mutota was the invited guest to Belize by UBAD Educational Foundation, which I was the spokesperson of, and UEF is the fourth pillar of the only Black independent media house in Belize, a Mandela newspaper, crime radio, XTV. And so we invite them to be the featured guest for African Emancipation Jubilee Day and African Reparation Awareness Day. So I just contextualize that so people know why Brother Ako came. And so keep in mind that as of January 2025, when Brother Ako became the co-host of Sunday Review, that our intention is the unification of the Caribbean region from the bottom up with credible, independent-minded, and people who are willing to work with other people of like minds for the liberation of the Caribbean region. Sister Danielle, I know you got more than 2 cents on the article Brother Ako just shared. So we go here.
It's funny you say that because it is something that has been, you've heard my views on it. I've said things part way sometimes when we're talking, but I take your point, Brother Ako. We can't deny our African heritage. For some of us, it's on our face, it's in our hair, it's in how we speak, it's in our customs. But to my mind, what that article has done is to remind us that emancipation is more than a celebration and it's much more than a ceremony. And I think the writer is onto something by asking that very pertinent question. Have we built institutions that remind us of the dignity? Are they reflecting the dignity, the essence of freedom that we have gotten because of the impact of emancipation? I think if we're looking at solidarity, we're talking about being unable to understand our neighbors. We need to understand the solemnness of emancipation. And I think throughout the Caribbean, we haven't done much of that. Emancipation was fought for the act of being able to say, I am not property. But after so many years, can we truly say that our institutions have reflected emancipation? And so I think when we get to the moment of recognizing that day, that it's not just about the ceremonies or the African dance, or remembering what has happened to us when we came from the Gold Coast or when our ancestors got here. But we have to do a little bit more about building those institutions that are worthy of the trust and dignity of solemnizing what freedom really is. And it's disappointing that many of our governments, actually I shouldn't say many, all of our Caribbean governments have not been able to look at our institutions to say that they have truly become emancipated. They still hold and they still conduct themselves within the colonial system. And the question for me is, Brother Ako and Sister YaYa, is when we have these conversations, are we honest enough with ourselves to appreciate that the ending of slavery and the ending of individuals, humans being treated as property, is a process? And that we have not carried forth or recognized that that process has not been completed. And so when we have these remembrances, they ought to remind us. It's almost like going to a funeral. You go to a funeral and hear the minister tell us that if you're from the Christian church, this is what you're supposed to be doing, to try to make a call to say how you must be living. Or if it is an undenominational one, the question is always how the person lived their life. What have they done for you? How have they inspired somebody? That for me is the challenge of this moment. Have we been able to challenge ourselves to understand and to build institutions that are truly worthy of being emancipated? So I do take it, Brother Ako, that it's much more than a ceremony. I do take it's much more than a dance. But I think it also has a lot to do with us recognizing that the process is incomplete, Sister YaYa. And we need to really free ourselves. And to free ourselves means that if I am free, whoever is beside me should also be free, if you get my drift.
I do hear both of you. And the truth is that in many cases, at least that I know of in the English-speaking Caribbean, the state has co-opted, and often the representation of the state may be people who look phenotypically African descendant or may not, and they are really into pomp and circumstances and performance. They're not into truly what our African ancestors and ancestors imagined for us, hoped for us, because that would empower people who would then challenge the power and status quo that I learned from Brother Akko. Because of adjustments and continuity, the enslavement continues. So we're not free, and that's just the real. But then I also want challenge, I feel that as African descendants, there are spaces that should be only for African descendants, broadly so. They're not everything that for everybody. And I find that African Emancipation Day is a sacred time. Now, I know say other people can today, but they're not for want to take up space and the front and center, especially indigenous people, because their oppressors are our oppressors. We oftentimes don't hear about the enslavement of indigenous people,
Right.
but indigenous people were enslaved as well. And within the UN framework, when they're looking at reparations, they include indigenous and African people. But oftentimes in these YaYa words, so-called CARICOM Reparations Committee, you know, say genuine representation of African descendants and indigenous people. That people oftentimes will have some political party alliances and they not genuinely represent the interests of the people they claim to represent. So that's something where, because I know here indigenous people that have no reparations gathering on the 1st of August. I don't hear that. So I think there's a distinct difference between pomp and circumstance, culture as performance on display versus genuine repair of people who they learn their past and want meaningful change so that they could imagine one different future for their descendants as our people imagine a different future for us.
I liked what you said though, YaYa. And it's got me thinking, because the truth is, when we think about emancipation in 1838, we must ask ourselves the question, who was it for? Who was it for? Who had it affected? And if we answer those two questions, then our remembrance must be, after all this time, when we remember it, have we allowed those persons to flourish? Have the systems that were built for these people or with those people, have they been built with them in mind to allow them to flourish? So we take into consideration the persons beside us, the indigenous persons, but we don't have that freedom of space though, YaYa, where we can have that conversation. We are not yet that free. We're not that free that we can speak independently and passionately about our roots. And I want to challenge you to think about it in this context. Racism is real. In the social worlds that we now construct, how we respond to them is the answer to accepting that racism is real. Because
Talk, brother. Finish this.
Yeah, what I wanted to say is the next article is related from Guyana. I think it's very important. But what I wanted to say, the discussion you and I had to say, that we focus on emancipation, which is a very important event in terms of the abolition of chattel slavery. But what we have to look at beyond emancipation is what is called liberation, which is what I think Danielle speaks about in so many different ways, by not calling it that. Because liberation is when you have total sovereignty relative to your culture, your economics, your politics. Right now, our states are neo-colonial constructs rooted in colonial realities, whether it is the parliamentary model of democracy and so on and so forth. So we always have to remember that our politicians, they're only, when they observe emancipation, they are only responding to the pressure of the masses coming to them, coming from the ground up, forcing them, because left to their own devices, they would not celebrate emancipation. I remember very clearly, when I was part of the National Joint Action Committee, and we were writing since the 1970s to observe and celebrate emancipation. I remember we writing the Express at the time. It was headed by he's a former minister, and we asked them not to use the word Negro to describe people of African descent. We wrote to them, and they said, and he said, and we have the letter. I don't know if Jack still has the letter in his archives. He is proud to be called a Negro. You understand? Now these are the same people who now are supposedly championing emancipation. But what is happening is that they are responding to the pressures from below, and left to their own devices, they will not celebrate emancipation. That is why they have the mace in the parliament and all this parliamentary land. There's a opposition MP couldn't speak patois in Jamaica's parliament. You know, and so anyway, let me read this other article. It's related. So let me read this other article here, right? And this article is extremely important as a follow-up to what we just yeah. So it says the headline is for our indigenous people. Okay? And the article begins, and this is related to the boat. I don't know if you all follow that article with the boat that collapsed and killed, I think, 100 people in Guyana, mainly indigenous people. So this article, the headline of this is for indigenous people. It came out of the Guyana, one of the Guyana's newspapers. All Guyanese know that the people commonly referred to as indigenous peoples or Amerindians were the first inhabitants of the land we now call Guyana. Less widely understood, however, are the methods employed by colonial powers to subjugate these first peoples. A careful reading of history leads to two unsettling observations. First, the treatment of Guyana's indigenous peoples became an early model for systems of domination later perfected through African enslavement. Second, there's a growing concern that many of the same methods of control have simply evolved and continue to shape the relationship between the modern Guyanese political state and its indigenous communities. Among the most effective colonial instruments was social engineering. Indigenous identities were systematically eroded through the suppression of names, customs, traditions, and ways of life. Ironically, many of the practices once dismissed as primitive, particularly those relating to environmental stewardships and sustainable living, are today recognized by modern climate science as invaluable. Through the integration of their spiritual beliefs with an intimate understanding of the natural environment, indigenous communities cultivated a culture of conservation that protected their lands and waterways for generations. Their legacy reminds us that all Guyanese owe a lasting debt to the first peoples of this country. It is against this historical backdrop that the treatment of Guyana's indigenous peoples must continue to be examined, including by the present administration. The issues at stake extend far beyond politics. They speak to indigenous rights, fundamental human rights, minority protections, and ultimately our shared humanity. The first example concerns the government's response following the sinking of the MV Barima at the National Toshas Conference held just 2 days after the tragedy. While recovery efforts were still underway, Vice President Bara Jagdeo announced $5 million to $30 million allocation for indigenous community projects and an increase in village procurement limits from $5 million to $30 million. Mr. Jagdeo announced that there will be a $3 billion fund set aside for housing program for indigenous peoples. These announcements came less than 48 hours after Guyana's worst maritime disaster, one that overwhelmingly affected indigenous communities in Region 1. The question is not whether these initiatives were beneficial, but whether their timing reflected genuine compassion or political calculation aimed at securing compliance at a moment of profound grief. A missionary, William Brett, chronicles efforts to convert indigenous peoples to Christianity, but his own writings also expose the racial attitudes that underpin the colonial project. He described indigenous peoples as savages, animals, and non-humans, warning that those who refuse conversion would face eternal damnation. And I read this because this was exactly the method that was utilized against African people. And that's why I said we have to understand solidarity in this context. So that if an indigenous person comes to my emancipation celebration, right, I should not make it an issue. While I understand what Sister YaYa is saying, that we want this day to focus on our issues, in which we should, but we should not exclude people who come to lend solidarity based on their particular and peculiar historical experience. So I want to hear your responses to that particular.
We have 4 minutes, Sister Danielle.
Yes, solidarity pulls us together, Aku, and we don't live in silos. And I think it's important that we really do make the effort to understand where each of us is coming from, because we're all coming from a different space. I take the point, and I wanted to just elaborate on what I closed earlier about racism being real, because I think where racism persists or where indigenous people continue to face marginalization, it reminds us of the work that we have to do. Because it clearly has impacted everything. It has impacted how they're treated. It's impacted how the African are treated. Persons of African heritage are treated. And so what I think we need to get from this through emancipation is how do we build spaces of inclusion, spaces where people are treated with dignity and equality. And I think when we think about emancipation, I think generally, Ako and YaYa, is that we just have to use those moments to challenge us to ask whether the values of freedom, equality, and human dignity are really things that the institutions that we have today are reflecting. Because indigenous people have the very same right that the African persons have, or persons of African heritage have, in terms of determining and celebrating and recognizing that there was a moment in time when there was a knee upon our necks. And that knee was lifted after the yeomanship work of our ancestors. How do we use such a moment to bring us together? Because remember, Caribbean unity can only come forward when there is solidarity amongst as many persons who share the Caribbean waters.
Respect, brother. I got 2 minutes to respond.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
Yeah, well, this, what I said earlier about Caribbean politicians, and they use emancipation as a political tool, and they have no real interest in the essence of emancipation. So in Trinidad, there was this call to by the former government, the PNM, to rename emancipation the African Emancipation. Okay. Now this is a very political party. When I was a young activist who locked us up for proclaiming our African heritage, who laughed at us when we were African clothing. In fact, there was a minister, he's now deceased in that government. He was asked why he doesn't wear dashiki for emancipation. And he said, you look like a mook. I don't know what you call a mook. We have a term which I call a mook. You look stupid. Right, so I can't explain the whole right, but he said I would look like a mook, wearing a dashiki. This was a minister, one of the senior leaders of the party. So the point is that they use these things as tools, and we must be very careful that we don't fall into the trap of following their lead and using these important historical occasions as tools of division rather than tools of solidarity, and a proponent of the advancement of humanity and Caribbean civilization. We have to be very careful.
Fair. Big respect. Let it be known that because one letter we don't know with past stories, we only know it and tell it, that when UEF, at the time under the leadership of African-American sister Virginia Eccles, for UEF, started organizing African Emancipation Jubilee Day community actions in 2014. There were other Belizeans who talked about it in a public space. UEF started the organizing, and we did it for 7 consecutive years. In the 8th year, in 2021, the state gazetted for August 1st, The first be Freedom Day, and UEF with community support pushed back and renamed it Emancipation Day. We're starting another campaign to rename it African Emancipation Day, so we know who the people were who were legally liberated from chattel enslavement. But if the people did not do that organizing, well, they never did nothing before. But what we did know that in 1888 and 1889 that there were a group of Black Belizeans who represented the descendants of enslaved people, who made very clear when they present themselves to the governor that they are the children of those formerly enslaved people on August 1st. So because we never know for we story, we think UEF are the first African descendant Belizeans who recognized the liberation of our African enslaved kinfolk when we were not. And so the United States interest, again, and that's why I keep saying, and I go in a break, the state does not have any legal, moral, ethical right to speak on behalf of African descendants or indigenous people, because it was the state who enslaved our foreparents. But when you have other indigenous or African groups who co-opt the integrity and support the state in whatever they're doing in the name of our people, it gives a divide and conquer vibration, because UEF would then have to hold those groups accountable for the betrayal of our people. We're going to take one quick break. We're going to come back and continue the reasoning with just the two story out our number of Brother Akko have to do today. Share with us for us to give our input on. So we have Brother Akko Mutota, the co-host of Sunday Review, and we have our monthly guest, Sister Danielle Archer, attorney and creator of Etha's Dispatch, known as the Chief Integrity Architect. Go listen to Etha's Dispatch on wherever podcasts or listen to on the podcast platform. Quick break, and then we'll come right back for continue our Caribbean reasoning on news within the region. Good, we got a break.
Smart for everybody. Smart leading everything. Smart give you everything. Smart offer everything. Smart give you everything. North to the east and the south and the west. Smart are the best. Calling. Double up my data and give me all the text. In fact, give me a plan for my family. Unlimited calls so me like it. And Smart make everybody feel happy. Bringing people together, me want it now. Smart got love for everybody. Me want my Smart plan. Want it right now. Me want my Smart plan. Want it right now. More bundles, data plan. Me want my smartphone, internet in my hand. Cause me want my Smart plan. Want it right now. Smart. Stay connected. Stay happy.
At Atlantic Bank, your convenience is our priority. Our contact center is designed to enhance your banking experience. With a wide range of customer service options, you save time and effort. You can easily call in to block or unblock your debit and credit cards, perform account inquiries, and access detailed card information. Whether you need assistance with online banking, merchant support, or general inquiries, our team is ready to help. For added convenience, if all operators are busy, you can leave your number and an operator will return your call as soon as possible to ensure you receive the support you need. Depending on your transaction type, we may need to verify your identity through a set of security questions. And remember, Atlantic Bank will never request your username or password for Atlantic Online via phone call, text, or email, ensuring your personal information remains safe and secure. Our support team is available Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. in both English and Spanish. Simply dial 223-1212. This is a dedicated line for our contact center. Atlantic Bank is committed to providing you with exceptional service and the tools you need to manage your finances conveniently and securely. Take full advantage of our easy-to-use contact center services today.
Atlantic Bank, building the future together.
The way Belize uses electricity is changing. At home, families are using more devices, smarter appliances, and connected technology. Across the country, businesses are growing, industries are expanding, and communities are finding new ways to live, work, and move forward. Behind that progress, the energy system must continue to grow with Belize. At BL, modernizing the grid is part of preparing for what comes next. A grid with greater visibility, more accurate information, and better tools to manage energy as needs change. Through investment in digital systems, upgraded infrastructure, and improved monitoring, BL is strengthening how electricity is managed and delivered across the country. Not just for today's needs, but for the future Belize is building. As new technology emerges, from solar generation to community energy systems, the grid must be ready to support them safely, reliably, and sustainably. This is the work of modernization, step by step, system by system, community by community, helping prepare Belize for a more connected, resilient, and sustainable energy future.
Hi, my name is Megan, and I'm a civil engineer here at M&M Engineering. Behind every successful production process in our factory come quality materials, skilled employees, and reliable equipment. Specifically, rebar and pre-stressing cable from Benny's, which are the building blocks of our products.
Not all rebar and steel are created equal. At Benny's, quality is savings because building with trusted materials means building stronger, safer, and longer.
Through Benny's Enterprises and Banquet, M&M Engineering has access to the highest quality products and heavy-duty machinery that help us improve efficiency, maintain productivity, and provide the most reliable solutions to our clients.
Best for you and best for me. At Benny's, it's the quality. Benny's, quality and savings. No Guatemala, this time we we have here. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This time my name is Papa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. What did I represent Belize and proud of it? No, tell me about maritime area. Long time ago I been by the slave master, talking about the help and the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad, bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. Country bad, bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. This time we maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master, talking about the help and the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad, bad love them homeland.
Back to Sunday Review. Sister YaYa, Sister Danielle, Brother Akko, and I did tell you no, before the show start, during the break, the conversation is rich. Sister Danielle, there was a point you said you wanted to make when we come back.
I wanted to tie up everything that's being said with the point that says, you know, and I'm attempting to be my most diplomatic. I have no difficulty with each Caribbean territory having their own Emancipation Day celebrations. But do you think in 2027, 2028, we could conceive of having a Caribbean emancipation celebration? Think about it. If I as a Jamaican understood what my African heritage brothers and sisters from Belize experienced, and those in St. Vincent and those in Barbados, right across the different territories, would I not have a greater appreciation for my connection to the Caribbean? Wouldn't it be easier for me to build solidarity throughout the Caribbean if I understood that my brothers and sisters across each territory shared and had similar experience? Emancipation was not a one island event. It was a Caribbean event. And I think it's high time that we challenge ourselves to have this kind of celebration that we do through the Caribbean, because that way we build solidarity and we invite our friends, persons who would not have experienced or understood the true meaning of 1938 to us, but those who could understand the implications and why it is that we are who we are. I'm just putting that out there, Brother Akko, because solidarity has been, you've used that word so keenly in the presentations. And YaYa, I understand the mission, which is to let other people understand where we're coming from. But it is not just a one territory thing. So I think in all of this, the goal and the dream should be that emancipation celebrations should be something that the Caribbean, and I'm challenging the Caribbean governments, but they won't do it. Because if they do it, they're going to secede power. So we as individuals must be able to think, could we next year have joint celebrations between two islands where And the next year we build it to 3, and the next year we build it to 4. And if there's anyone listening and you really think that it is something to do, reach out to YaYa, because you know she's the queen of movements. So reach out to YaYa, because it is only by us as a people wanting to get together and doing it our way can we actually change how the Caribbean sees each and every brother and sister.
Real talk.
Well,
I know you made an
well, sister,
error. It's 1838. I know you said 1938.
Sorry.
And also to
1830.
say
yeah.
that my matriarchal great grandparents were from Jamaica and Barbados. And so the connection even closer than
There you
a lot
go.
of we know.
There you
Good
go.
suggestion, sis. Where there's a will,
There you
there's a way.
go.
But I can go ahead, because we're not done with your other stories.
So
We got
that was
more.
the point. This was is a wonderful suggestion that we should have, just as how we have Curry Festa, right? Now, when Curry Festa came to Trinidad a few years ago, I think it was 6 or 7 years ago, in my community, we had an event for Curry Festa. Okay? And we hosted people from Suriname,
Nice.
dancers, and so on. So that idea is a wonderful idea that we should really pursue. So every year, whether it's through CARICOM or whoever, one major Caribbean celebration for emancipation could take place in a particular island, and you move it around like Curry Festa. So that we have this unifying concept or construct of what emancipation should be. Brilliant idea, sister. Brilliant idea. Okay? That's why I said you had me at hello. And she had me at hello, so no, another brilliant idea.
I think it's a brilliant idea too.
So anyway, the next headline is from Belize. And it says, the headline is Belize receives first transfers under safe third country agreement. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade confirms that the agreement between Belize and the United States of America for cooperation regarding the examination of protection requests, commonly known as Safe Third Country Agreement, has begun operation. In full conformity with the terms of the agreement, 8 individuals were transferred to Belize in July 2026. The first transfer carried out under its provisions. The transfers were overseen jointly by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade and the Ministry of Immigration in accordance with the procedures set out in the agreement. Before the transfers took place, national authorities completed all required reviews and clearances through established national and international mechanisms consistent with Belize's due diligence process. Under the agreement, eligible third country nationals seeking protection may be transferred from the United States to Belize on a case-by-case basis. Each proposed transfer is reviewed individually, and the government of Belize retains full discretion to accept or decline any request. The government of Belize reaffirms its commitment to implementing the agreement in accordance with domestic law and its international obligation. Now, this wording of this thing makes you believe that Belize is being noble like some of the other Caribbean countries who participated in this Trump thing to expel immigrants who the United States does not want in the country. What has happened is that all of these countries who have agreed to this have compromised their sovereignty. That's what they did, while pretending that this is some humanitarian gesture. If it is, why then are we not inviting more Haitians who are totally impacted by the US and EU, French, and other kinds of interference in their countries? So this is just, to me, a hypocritical sort of response to a total compromising of the sovereignty of Belize and other islands in the Caribbean that have adopted this policy, in which Donald Trump, as part of his process, wanting to whiten America, is expelling people of color from the United States. So that's my take on that particular article.
Before I get Sister Danielle 2 cents, I don't want to leave it more pepper in the spot. I asked AI one certain question, and this is the response. The $125 million Millennium Challenge Corporation, MCC grant, and the Safe Third Country Agreement between Belize and the United States have sparked intense public debate, with critics connecting the migration deal to expectations surrounding U.S. development funding. The bilateral asylum cooperation agreement commenced operations with initial transfers in July 2026. So I just want to throw that in there before Sister Danielle responded.
And I'll just drop in there. Brother Aku, you have concerns about the Haitians. The Haitians will come. Their protective status has ended in the United States, and there's going to be a place for them to go. So since many of us, our nations would not have taken them naturally, they will now take them. And they will not complain about it, we can infer, because there's this agreement that is now in place, and there are going to be hundreds of Haitians who are now going to come to our shores. The question is going to be, how will we respond to them? Will they be responded to differently because they have come under this program? And when those who come by the boats, how will they be treated? Because we do have now a precedent set. I'm leaning on my little lawyer hat here. The precedent has now been set for us to welcome them. But with that observation in mind, I'll go a little bit further, because there are several questions that I've noted that I think Caribbean citizens across the different territories have been asking. Are citizens fully informed about the scope of these agreements? Do immigration authorities have the resources and the legal framework to manage them? How are the rights of transferred individuals being protected? And what are the implications for regional cooperation and public confidence? My concern here, or should I say my insight, is that strong partnerships should never come at the expense of strong institutions. And so this is really a test of governance. And I say that governance very strongly, particularly here in the Caribbean, where I think Ethos Works has a mission to try to ensure that we develop our own brand of what Caribbean governance is about. So this is a great opportunity for Caribbean countries to have a discussion. What's the right to cooperate? They do have the right to cooperate with international partners, but the extent to which they do is something that challenges us as Caribbean territories, not just singularly, but collectively. What does that mean? Because in the great global sphere, we understand that negotiation partners are unequal. They are the United States, and many of us are just, we're singular. We don't have no power. Yes? So there's an unequalness in terms of the power, and that is to be accepted. The challenge, I think, for us, though, is how do we explain to the public how this occurs? How transparent are the governments? What's the level of accountability from the governments? What's the assurance that these agreements serve the national interest while respecting legal obligations and human dignity? I think, to my mind, that's my guttural response. And it's my guttural response because I think throughout the Caribbean citizens have been asking these questions. And it's a great opportunity, YaYa, for our Caribbean governments to respond. What we have seen are different governments responding separately to the situation, but there has not yet been a Caribbean response. And I have not yet seen, and you could tell me if it has happened in Trinidad, if it has happened in Belize, where there is ongoing public discussion and sharing of this information. I haven't been able to get any information from any of the other Caribbean islands that there has been this sharing of the memorandum, that the people know exactly what is happening. So I do solemnly think it is a test of governance in the Caribbean, and it presents itself, as the Chinese would say, not as a crisis, but as an opportunity, if you look at the word, for us to determine or to craft a brand of Caribbean governance that answers the very questions that have been raised.
Valid point, Sister Danielle. And I thankful that we have this space. And I don't know other space like this, so we could have this level of continuous conversation as relates to the governance and the everyday liberty of people in the greater Caribbean region. At all times, I keep in mind, remember, Brother Akko said they're not acting sovereign. They can't act sovereign because, as far as I'm concerned, we are still colonies with governor generals. And we have to always keep that in at the forefront. We are people from below resisting this continuity of enslavement on the plantation, as Brother Akka pointed out. We resist it. And our process, we recognize that. But to always say, they themselves, the political leaders, are limited within the systems that they're operating in, and some ain't quite comfortable with it because they benefit from it personally, materially, they and their peoples. But that for we continue to have these conversations for share knowledge so that people make the connection across borders in the greater Caribbean, regardless of language barriers. So even though Cuba is a Spanish-speaking territory, there are people there who are bilingual. There are people in the French-speaking Caribbean or Dutch-speaking Caribbean who speak and understand English, like Brother Akko said with Curacao. So that people that listen, people still they learn, that would learn from each other across borders. So that we be mindful that when we having these conversations, we to reach with people, know that we to make progress in at this time period, and people go back and listen to Sunday Review at different times. We share the link. So the family could keep hope alive and continue to have the courage, because the systems, the people will have the power. The people always greater than the people in power, but sometimes they don't feel like that. And so the people in power, they not just want to take it the lay down of we to share the knowledge and empower people. Then they listen, then they watch. So that we also be aware that the power we to go against, but we recognize that what risk we're willing to take, because it is a risk for the liberation of our people collectively in the greater Caribbean. Brother Akko?
I wanted to make a point that Danielle made about cooperation. Countries must cooperate, and that's part of the international global arrangement. We live in a shared world, shared humanity. But there's a difference between cooperation and coercion. And coercion is what I think is happening in this situation here with the United States and this agreement to take what is called this third-party agreement, in that the Trump administration is trying to rid itself of its so-called illegal immigration problem and some of the problem it associates with criminality related to immigration. So, and they're offering you the carrot and the stick. So in other words, if you don't follow, they're offering you some money. And if you don't take the money, which is the carrot, then most likely you'll get the stick. This is what I believe our Caribbean governments are responding to. And knowing them in the past and how they dealt with issues, I'll give you a clear example. One of the earliest conflicts in Haiti, with Haiti, there was Haitian immigration leaving Haiti. And I was traveling from Cuba to Trinidad. I went to do something in Cuba. And so the plane stopped in Jamaica, and there were some Haitians in Jamaica who were trying to get asylum in Trinidad. At the time, the opposition was in power. And so the government at the time wanted to accommodate the Haitians and give them as asylum, in Trinidad, right? The opposition, which is the PNM, which has ruled country more than any other party, is so-called African party. The then leader of the party, I heard him make a speech in Trinidad condemning the fact that the government is talking about taking Haitians, and he asking the question, where are we going to house them, where are we going to do this, and basically saying that we should not take these people. And this is a problem. So we are not going to willingly take other. It's the same thing with Jamaica, where Jamaica had the crisis, right? Treated Jamaicans extremely badly in Trinidad and Barbados. The same thing with Guyana. Guyana had a serious economic crisis, and they treated Guyanese extremely badly. They are only doing this so-called third-party agreement because it is under coercion. They're being forced. And if on their own accord they have to take in Haitians, they will never do it.
Well, here's the thing though, Brother Akko. Even if on their own accord, they would never do it. But what I'm trying to say is that they are now going to be forced to do it. And it's going to be interesting to see how it is that they're going to respond.
And you see, the Trump administration is expelling the Haitians not under this agreement. They're just expelling the Haitians back to Haiti, from what I understand.
We're going to see how it unfolds. I'm not a fortune teller. I'm certainly not Miss Cleo. But I'm just saying, under these circumstances, the precedent has now been set for certain things. And so, the law based on the precedent can be used now to say you have a foundation to do this. So having done this, there's going to be some brilliant lawyer who is now going to be able to take that information now and say, well, you now have a foundation to take in the Haitians or the Cubans. But we're going to see that development. But yeah, because of what you said earlier, if I could just jump in, Brother Akko, for the purpose of those persons listening, I just wanted to let them know that I think my research has confirmed that Jamaica has already confirmed, Dominica Republic has confirmed, Dominica has confirmed, Antigua and Barbuda has confirmed that they're going to be party to that arrangement. But their prime minister has said that it's going to be tightly restricted, and I believe they've tabled some resolution in parliament. So in terms of public information, that may be out there, but the rest is there are reports that Guyana is in conversations, but we don't know. And there has been something coming out of CARICOM, I think. I'm not sure if I saw it somewhere, but it's at the back of my mind that some members have confirmed, others are still in discussions. Haven't heard anything from Trinidad, but the secrecy surrounding the agreements coming from many Caribbean territories is really the point of concern in the Caribbean, because it's being done and the public has no idea of what the real terms or cost or consequences are. And I think, I will repeat, people need to know, and people have the right to ask questions. And the whole notion within the Caribbean that we simply just follow what the leaders say, we have to challenge that. And we kind of have to ask, because every one of us have very limited public resources, particularly when we talk about health. Yes? And everyone who comes to our country has a right to housing, education, basic necessities. And, we talk about solidarity. We want to know how the little pot going to share. What are going to be the resources that are going to be made available, and how and where we're going to get the extra from. And this is why Caribbean citizens have to ask questions. And it's how you're going to ask these questions, because people just want to know. Because we don't have the power, you are right to say, no, we're not going to take it. We're not that unified. We're not in that position or the zone of economic strength where we are willing to take that risk. In Jamaica, the position was, we don't want our Jamaicans to lose their visas. We have to appreciate that that is perhaps the power and the carrot stick. In other jurisdictions, that there are limitations or restrictions on travel. So the question is really, how do you prepare the society for this agreement, and how do we make the best of it in circumstances where there is unequalness or unevenness in how we can negotiate the terms?
Valid point you make, Sister Danielle. If I'm not mistaken, Brother Akko, I think it was in Antigua, the Prime Minister might have said that, I think now there's a $20 million, there's a bond, there's a financial bond as relates to visas. That like, once you no kiss this ring, I feel the heat then, where I make life hard for
That's the cohesion I'm talking about. They put a bond because the Antigua, I think it was questioned the whole, validity of the thing, and and they say, okay, well, you're gonna get, and that's what I'm talking about. So a lot of these leaders and governments are being coerced into taking these actions. So Daniel made a very important point. We have a tendency in the Caribbean, and this is where I have been saying, what we call parliamentary democracy is not participatory democracy. Parliamentary democracy is based on representation. It's what's called representative democracy. And it is not a participatory democracy, in which there are institutions that allow the people to discuss, debate, and make real decisions on important issues surrounding the society. And that is something we have to look at. There's no consultation mechanism that can allow us to say, okay, you're saying this is going to happen, let's bring it before the people, even in the form of a referendum or referendum. There is nothing. And this is the struggle to me in the Caribbean. We have to move from this participatory, from this representative democracy to participatory democracy to address the issue that Daniel spoke about. I'll make one point on this. In a writer who was writing about the French Revolution, it was a Russian scholar. And he said when the people stormed the Bastille, in France, they were fighting for the right to participate. What they got was the right to vote. And the right to vote, while it is a form of participation, it is not the ultimate expression of participation, right? And this is something we have to understand in the Caribbean, as it represents the limitations of our so-called parliamentary democracy.
Okay, we'll have to go to break, but for some of what Brother Akka just described, it's what you call substantive representation versus descriptive representation. We have to go to break. We have to do speed run when you come back in the next 30 minutes. Time fly when you're having fun. Good, thanks. Quick break, we'll come right back.
Tired of replacing light bulbs? LEDs are what you need. LEDs last up to 30,000 hours. That's 30 times longer than incandescent bulbs, and up to 8 times longer than compact fluorescents. So less changing and less trash. Planet Earth thanks you. And the LED experts at Brothers Habet and Habet will help you find the best LED solution with colors for every room and mood, starting as low as $6.95. You can even get LED strips for home, office, and industrial use. So say goodbye to fluorescent tubes forever. And because they use up to 90% less energy, you save money. Money you can spend on other things. So head to Brothers Habet or Habet and Habet today. You can also call, email, or Facebook us. Have a brilliant day.
En Atlantic Bank, tu comodidad es nuestra prioridad. Nuestro centro de contacto está diseñado para mejorar tu experiencia bancaria. Con una amplia gama de opciones de servicio al cliente, ahorras tiempo y esfuerzo. Puedes llamar fácilmente para bloquear o desbloquear tus tarjetas de débito y crédito, realizar consultas de cuentas y acceder a información detallada de tus tarjetas. Ya sea que necesites asistencia con la banca en línea, apoyo para comercios o consultas generales, nuestro equipo está listo para ayudarte. Para mayor comodidad, si todos los operadores están ocupados, puedes dejar tu número y un operador te devolverá la llamada lo antes posible, para asegurarse de que recibas el apoyo que necesitas. Para mayor seguridad, es posible que necesitemos verificar tu identidad con un conjunto de preguntas sencillas. Recuerda, Atlantic Bank nunca solicitará tu nombre de tu usuario ni contraseña de Atlantic Online por llamada telefónica, mensaje de texto o correo electrónico, asegurando que tu información personal permanezca segura y protegida. Nuestro equipo de apoyo está disponible de lunes a viernes, de 8 a.m. a 6 p.m. en inglés y en español. Simplemente marca al 223-1212. Esta es la línea dedicada para nuestro centro de contacto. Atlantic Bank se compromete a brindarte un servicio excepcional y las herramientas que necesitas para administrar tus finanzas de manera conveniente y segura. Aprovecha al máximo nuestro servicio del centro de contacto.
Atlantic Bank, building the future together.
Smart for everybody. Smart leading everything. Smart give you everything. Smart offer everything. Smart give you everything. North to the east and the south and the west. Smart are the best. Darling, double up my data and give me all the text. In fact, give me a plan for my family. Unlimited calls, so me like it. And Smart make everybody feel happy. Bringing people together, me want it now. Smart got love for everybody. Me want my Smart plan. Want it right now. Me want my Smart plan. Want it right now. More bundles, data plan. Me want my smartphone, internet in my hand. Call me want my Smart plan. Want it right now. Smart. Stay connected. Stay happy.
Need a fresh new kitchen, flip that switch ignition. GE appliances shining
Every knob, every line, I'll align and turn the shower on. Feel gold, colder in the chrome. So bold from the tiles to the tiny screws. We've got the wow you choose. All in one place, Design Depot. Everything you need for the life you want. Let's go! From the floor to the paint to the patio glow. Build it up, light it up. Watch your dream home grow. All in one place. All in one place. All in one place. All in one place. All in one place.
Design Depot, all in one place. Nando's Wholesale is your market leader in Belize's wholesale industry when it comes to high-quality products at the most reasonable and competitive prices. With over 40 years in the wholesale business, Nando's Wholesale embraces the partnership of the hotel industry in Belize by providing world-renowned brands in wines, seasonings, condiments, and cleaners in industrial sizes, as well as small and large kitchen appliances and equipment. Nando's also takes pride in providing one of the quietest and most durable air conditioning systems in Belize with technical support and spare parts. Nando's Wholesale, professional, reliable, effective, and prompt. Nando's Wholesale always delivers. Visit us at www.nandos.bz or send an email to nandos@nandos.bz. Or, even better yet, give us a call today at 222-500 or 280-8080 to speak to one of our sales representatives today.
Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad.
Welcome back to Sunday Review. Sister YaYa, Sister Danielle, Brother Akko, speed wrong. Less than 30 minutes. Caribbean news. Brother Akko definitely wants to share stories from Venezuela, Cuba, and Jamaica. Go there, Brother Akko.
So the next headline is from Venezuela, and the headline is, "To the victor belongs the spoils. Trump flaunts U.S. plunder of Venezuela." United States President Donald Trump has escalated his openly imperialist rhetoric against Venezuela, portraying the South American country as a neo-colonial possession whose sovereign resources Washington may plunder as the spoils of military aggression. On Wednesday, August 5th, during an event named Powering the American Dream, Trump boasted about the criminal act perpetrated against Venezuela on January 3rd, which culminated in the abduction of the president, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife, National Assembly Deputy and First Lady Celia Flores, as well as the murder of more than 100 people, including 32 Cubans and 47 Venezuelan soldiers. Trump described the attack as a 48-minute war before declaring, "And we paid for the war with what we have taken out many, 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 many times." He further claimed that 219 men, accompanied by a few women, entered Fuerte Tiuna, a Venezuelan military complex housing thousands of soldiers, to carry out the operation. Without reservation, Trump presented Venezuela's oil as the material reward for Washington's military aggression. "We are taking a lot of oil from Venezuela," Trump declared, adding that billions and billions of barrels were coming out of the country. Immediately beforehand, he stated, "Now I love Venezuela," effectively associating his newfound approval of the country with Washington's appropriation of his petroleum and laying bare the colonial nature of the January 3rd bombing and abduction. Trump then summarized his position with an explicitly imperialist maxim, "To the victor belongs the spoils." Now, the reason why this is important is because a lot of people, including my shameful Prime Minister in Trinidad and Tobago, shameless Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, supported the Trump event in Venezuela on the basis that Maduro was a drug dealer, that Venezuela was undemocratic, right? And they killed innocent fisher persons in the Caribbean Sea. So all this pretext in the media about democracy and lack of elections, it was all about appropriating and expropriating Venezuela's resources based on what we have read here on this by statements made by the president himself. So that's my comment on that. I await your.
Many years ago, YaYa, Sister YaYa, Brother Akko, I did European history. I don't know if any of you did or any of your listeners have. There's a book, and on the front of the European history book was a plum, and you could see the European leaders around cutting, and it was really depicting how the world was divided, or the spoils of the world were divided amongst the European powers. And if you think about the history of what is now called the Middle East, which is really not the Middle East, but it's more of a political construct. The term that you've used, it really does symbolize what I saw, that to the victor belongs the spoils. You know, you win the war and you get to decide who or what is named where or what. Look, the bigger conversation that I think we need to have, Brother Akko, is the whole notion of how symbolic it is. It does convey strength. It does convey that the person who is victorious who has access to the asset. The bigger question for us as small Caribbean states is, what does that mean for our own power, our own sovereignty, and the importance of international law? Everything that you've said to me resonates with that. You know, how will the assets of our neighbors be treated? That conversation that you raised about what has happened to Venezuelan oil is a conversation that touches and concerns Haiti. Many of us don't remember, or perhaps it's too far gone in our memory, or we just don't talk about it. But you can't think about Haiti without thinking about what has happened to its gold reserves. You can't have a conversation about what is happening in Venezuela without thinking about what has happened in other parts of the world where there has been conflict. My greatest concern, Brother Akko and Sister YaYa, is the strength of our international law at this moment. How will international law respond to these situations? And if there is no strong response, or no suitable response, or no response that respects the assets that are being taken, what will that mean for Caribbean states who have their own resources? Very good conversation to think about Haiti. Yeah, just now, Sister YaYa, you pointed out the resources that Haiti has. You may want to remind our listeners. They have resources. Our sister state, Guyana, has resources. Is that the conversation that we're going to be having when we think about what's happening along Essequibo? When we talk about oil deposits, there is conversations in and surrounding Jamaica about the possibility of having oil. What does that mean for the protection of the resources of individual states? How do you determine who pays for the cost of an invasion? These are questions that we fear to have discussions about, but they're fundamentally questions of governance. And they require a Caribbean governance approach and a governance conversation. If I could borrow Brother Akko's words, it perhaps is a good time for us to start having that participatory approach, because citizens would want to understand, what does this mean for them? How could they have these conversations that protect their assets? Most of us don't know anything about international waters. What does that mean for our fisheries? You spoke about fishermen. Do we understand that there is in fact a possibility that our fisheries could be taken over, much the same way that the oils of Venezuela have been taken over? What's the conversation that we're going to have? What's the preparatory or protections that the Caribbean is going to have and orchestrate? Look, listeners, I'm just raising this. Viewers, I'm just thinking it through just as you are, by using this example to simply say, what will our government say? How will they respond? Because this is not for people to respond to. This is for governments to take the lead. But how they take the lead is always going to be determined based on what your sister YaYa said earlier, who has the power and what it is that they want or are fearful of losing. Those are my thoughts, Brother Aku.
Big thanks, sister. And Haiti has deposits of gold, copper, bauxite, silver, calcium carbonate, and marble, even though the singular dominant narrative is how impoverished Haiti is, not about who has created the impoverishment and continue to keep the impoverishment in their own interest. And that's why it's important we have these conversations, so we know that we could only have the liberation we have because of the sacrifice Haiti made and Haitian African ancestresses and ancestors. Because of them, we are. Not forget it. But I call your next story.
I want to comment what Sister Danielle said about international law, and I will just quote Walter Rodney on this. International law is European law. And he put it more crudely in a thing. He said international law is white man law. So international law has no validity in the world. It is the gunboat diplomacy. You know what is called those who the strongest win, right? The whole Darwinian ideology is what governs things, and law is convenient. Anyway, so we move on to the next article. It's a very important article on the environment coming out of Cuba. And the reason I think this article is important, it is because when I was in Belize, I was looking at some of the mountains that were being denuded, right, for whatever construction material. It's the same thing in Trinidad. We had a hill here, beautiful hill called San Fernando Hill. They almost destroyed that hill until activists, fought to stop the quarrying. So let me read the article. The headline is called Environmental Alert, the Sand Dilemma. The ecological, social, and economic damage could be irreversible. A balance must be found urgently. Companies of various sizes collectively extract around 50 billion tons of sand and gravel annually for construction and industrial purposes, demonstrating an unsustainable practice from any perspective. With this annual extraction, a wall 27 meters wide and 27 meters high could be built around the entire equator, explained the United Nations Environmental Program, UNEP, in its assessment of the ongoing disaster. It noted that sand acts as a natural water filter, protects coastlines from erosion, prevents desalination of coastal aquifers, and provides crucial habitats for fish, plants, turtles, birds, crabs, and other species of flora and fauna. Although it is a finite resource, its exploitation is likely to grow in the coming years as countries invest in climate adaptation, urban expansion, and infrastructure, including works for the use of renewable energies. Artificial beaches, skyscrapers, ports, and flood barriers require enormous quantities of sand and gravel. But the excessive extractions from rivers, deltas, and coastal areas threaten the ecosystems that protect communities from storms, erosion, and saltwater intrusion, experts argue. That's the dilemma. We want both living and dead sand, said a UNEP official during a presentation in Switzerland on sand and sustainability. So I would stop here because I think this is an extremely important subject that just go by the way. I remember as a boy, when people were building homes, they'll go on the beach and dig sand to mix the mortar and so on. And some, I guess, wise person in the government stopped that from happening in Trinidad. So you can no longer take beach sand to build in Trinidad. You have to buy sand from the quarries. But this, I saw it a lot when I was in Belize. It's in Trinidad. It's everywhere you go. I saw it in Jamaica when I was in Jamaica last year, August. And this is an issue that we must understand, the sand dilemma. So, your take.
Sister Danielle?
I think I like how you ended it, Ako, recognizing that it's not just unique to any one particular Caribbean island. I think the idea is how we as citizens are stewards of it, and the reality is that meh, many of us don't understand the importance of the environment, the sustainability of it, the conversations that we should be having. And the reason for that is because it's from the top down. So you have environmental workshops, you have the environmental policies, you have the high office conversations about environmental protection. But the truth is that when it gets to the ground, the economic reality, many of our citizens don't understand the importance of it. So I take it that beyond policy, we need to really do have this conversation with our citizens. And this is another example. I guess it's what you call a segue, YaYa, the participatory aspect of governance, where you know take it to the people so that they understand that the mining and the sand extraction is something that they have to protect. The challenge here is that it's not just being done by quote unquote little man. You have big companies, corporations. I remember some time ago, truckloads of sand was missing from Jamaica, and I kept from a Jamaican beach, and it made a headline, and I kept asking, so nobody never see the trucks leaving? Cause it's not like you have a magic wand and the sand just disappear. So where the truck them did go? Who saw the trucks? And nobody's willing to come forward. And those are systemic issues within it. Who speaks? When they speak out, what happens to them when they speak out? And who are actually the masterminds behind such activities? And it speaks to a greater issue of not just regulation and stewardship, but also enforcement of many policies, because many of these islands do have these policies. The question is, how are they enforced?
100% right, Sister Danielle. I want to keep one eye on Belize right now because of the top-down culture in Belize as it relates to governance. And right now, the state has, with much pushback, has decided the Belize Telemedia Limited that want private-public partnership in a telecommunication, and they don't agree that they want buy out the competitor, even though the law of Belize said that not will happen. The state still they go ahead with it, and for the first time, we had independent senators sending out a letter in solidarity. The unions are organizing, business is organizing. And so, and the state are like, we don't care what to do, how to organize, we want about SpeedNet. And the red flag is that the Prime Minister of Belize family stand for benefits. So there's a conflict of interest. So no keep one eye on Belize for say, who will win this wrong? Is it the people in power or if the power are the people? Because I mean that if the state have their way, while we may have what we say, that we only have one telecommunication provider to choose from, I don't know what that means. Even though the law said otherwise, so no keep one eye on Belize, and they're not serious about participatory democracy because that one be shared power, and they're not into that within the paradigm of this Westminster system that many other Caribbean countries continue to operate within. You could squeeze in a Jamaican story, Brother Akka. We have 7 minutes left.
I doubt it. There's another story that I think the Jamaican story has to do with the drugs at the port, and so I don't know that because that's such a sort of beaten subject in the Caribbean already.
Okay, which next story I want to squeeze in quickly?
The one I think I want to squeeze in is one on artificial intelligence, which I think is important to understand. It's called Donald Trump's what is called slopaganda.
Which country?
Cuba, right? And it says artificial intelligence in the hands of reactionary projects can become an automated factory of myths, enemies, and emotional obedience. I think it's important because of what is happening with us in the Caribbean with this, AI and so on. So let me just read part of it, then we can discuss it for a couple of minutes. Donald Trump doesn't use artificial intelligence just to produce eye-catching images. He employs it as a political tool to fabricate reality in the symbolic realm. The phenomenon was recently described by the Financial Times in an article dedicated to slopaganda, a neologism combining the words slop and propaganda. The text explains how Donald Trump's team and his digital ecosystem are using images generated with artificial intelligence for personal glorification, attacks on adversaries, the dramatization of policies, and the production of political narratives before they even exist in reality. According to this information, in May, Trump increased the number of AI-generated images published on Truth Social sevenfold, 57 in the first 2 weeks of the month, compared to 8 in all of April. Furthermore, he reportedly posted more than 2,700 times on that social network so far this year, an average of 19 messages today. Trump has been using fake or exaggerated images as part of his digital strategy for more than a decade. All right, so I want to stop here because one of the things we have used now quite frequently in responding is fake news. And all of us know that came from Donald Trump. We now use that all the time. The Trump administration, as imbecile as it may look, has shaped the information, social, and cultural landscape in ways that we are not fully appreciated. Right? Before Trump talked about this fake news, what did his communication person said? When confronted on a lie, she said there are alternative facts. And that too has become part of the language of communication, alternative facts. And now this article written in the Financial Times, I think it was, carried in Cuba, is about slopaganda, right? And it's all part of this ecological, if you want to call it, communication system that Trump has created, that we are ignoring to some extent the impact of this possibly in the future of communication and language and so on, and cognitive development or decline. So that's why I felt it was important to read this particular article.
I'll just extract the word ignore. I don't think that we're ignoring it. I don't think he made it. I think what he's done, his administration has shown how to harness it and use it effectively. Fake news is not new. It's just that social media has allowed it to develop. I think for us as a Caribbean citizens and as governments, the issue is really how do you protect our systems from the influence or impact of deep fake, AI, and how social media can spread misinformation, particularly so in our small societies. YaYa, this is not just a 3-second response. It's certainly going to mean that we're going to have this conversation perhaps when we come back, or you have another one specifically on AI. And here's why I say this, YaYa. We must empower our citizens to use it as well. Everyone can lift a sword. The question is how useful that sword is to you when you lift it. We all have shields. We all carry swords. There was a time when it was said that the most powerful tool was our pen. Now the most powerful thing that we can use is social media, our fingers. So how it has been used, how it's going to be used to transform governments is important. But what is most important, I think, is how citizens use it, because at the heart of this conversation is the trust that we have in our governments, and how our governments will use social media to either continue the system of governance or to make it one wherein there is no system that we have a voice in.
Fair. We did have a segment on AI with Caribbean Roots. What was the name of the father and son, Brother Akko?
Felipe Noguera and his son. I think it's Danielle was his son's name, I think.
It was deep. It was detailed. But we have to continue the conversation for sure. Final thoughts, Sister Danielle, Brother Akko?
You know, it's always good to be here. I apologize, Brother Akko, for, the trouble I may get you in by my statements. You might really have to find me at home there in Trinidad or in Belize, because at some point somebody's going to run me somewhere. But the truth is, I'm grateful to be here, because this is where we get to share information with accuracy that is fact-checked. It's not deep faked. It's not convoluted. It is what it is. And I appreciate the space. Thank you, YaYa. Thank you, Brother Akko. Thank you to XTV for bringing us together and allowing us a space that we can only hope will grow, so that the Caribbean itself can strengthen its solidarity.
Big respect, Sister Danielle. Brother Akko?
I support it. And when I was in Belize, I forgot to mention the historic work of what I call the legend, Evan X. Hyde. So if he's listening, Brother X, congratulations, and I applaud you for your effort in building this institution and keeping it alive.
And keeping it alive, yes.
And keeping it alive. So again, these discussions are important because what we are witnessing in the Caribbean and following again the US is what I call anti-intellectual tendencies, in which critical analysis, in which thesis and antithesis are not in any way seen as important in terms of decoding information and understanding reality. So discussions like these are extremely important, and to have an institution like this, again, is really a blessing. To use the Christian term, that I don't like to use too much, but to use a Christian term is really a blessing to have this institution. And I applaud the XTV and Creme Radio for surviving and allowing us the opportunity to express ourselves in this way. And thank you to Sister YaYa for being the firebrand and troublemaker that you are, for inviting me to Belize.
Big respect. Know that Brother Evan X. Hyde listened to media throughout the country, especially Zinc Fence Media. Loyally, intently, he listened. So he definitely listened this morning. Big thanks to Sister Danielle and Brother Akko for creating the time and space with this morning. We want to thank, I have to say, from 4 o'clock today until that Bird's Isle, they already have the 17th tribute to Lucky Dube. Tickets are $15. They have one $5 raffle for one electronic scooter. So it's for me, it's a safe space where primarily Black people could gather and just be themselves. And we don't get them spaces often. So big respect to Brother Dara Robinson, to Tia, his partner, to Kwame Scott, and other community partners who ensure that this tribute could continue from 4 p.m. until at Birzal today. And then we want to thank the security guard, Shane Flowers, Master Chief Operator, Harlan Wagner, downstairs at Creme Radio, Larry Guerrero, known as Larry G. This show will repeat at 5:30 today on XTV local channel. Remember, you could go to XTV Belize on Facebook or YouTube and listen to the programming at any time. Share the link. I'm telling you, listen, the number of viewership on Facebook in particular has just scaled big time since January 2025. And we want our listeners and viewers and streamers know that we appreciate the honor to listen, or to share the link, or to have conversations independently, or to book out a road, or to make we know, hey, to listen. And I'm telling this, right? Maricela Maya, the director for XTV and Creme Radio News, said, anybody recognize Brother Akko on the ground when they say as I tell her one of the best response, right, was the security guard at XTV at Zinc Fence. So Brother Akko bust together and said, hey, Daddy wanted to pass something with you. Yes, I mean, he just lit up. Brother Shane, respectful, listening to XTV. He's not just a security guard. The brother is an amazing human being, very knowledgeable, skilled.
And also, Sister YaYa, when I was walking on the south side, a brother saw me on a bicycle and said, hey, brother, how are you? So he actually recognized me from XTV too.
Lovely. Lovely.
Yes, it was so love. Really thanks to the Belizean community members and everybody would donate funding, resources, then time, energy for make UEF, African Emancipation Jubilee, and African Reparation Awareness Day. For me, that the first year I got to learn that the community carried this community action, and we really, really value it. When I hear from me as it relates to the state nomination of people on the pro tem African Reparation Committee, of course, when I use the word African, I need to take time and breathe so that when I respond, it's adequate. And I'm a true representation of the people who will come before me, the people who are here now, and the people who will come in the future. I saw my sign up on that. So remember, on a go to the event today, 4 o'clock until Birzal, Dara and Kwame, 17 Lucky Dube tribute. Breeze the blow, good vibes, excellent food. I could buy African products. Come out from 4 until today. Until then, remember say, only organized people want to save the people.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Bye.
We have ya. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This time me name is Pupa. Believe me, come from the Billy City area. 110% Belize and proud of it, sir. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago, agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad, bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. Them country bad, bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. This a fi we, we da fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This a fi we da fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a me name is Pupa. Believe me, come from the Billy City area. 110% Belize and proud of it, sir. Don't tell me about maritime area.